Welcome to the Battlefield Show. I'm your host, Sage Goodwin, and today I'm joined, as always, by Sammy Boy.
What's going on, guys? Good to be back.
And we're also joined by Mark, aka Split Screen.
Hello, everyone. Hope you're doing well.
And today we're going to talk about how the game is built to grow and what it means for the future of Battlefield 2042. So, let's jump right into things. Mark, how's it going, man?
Yeah, it's going very well, very well. How about yourself?
Doing good. Sammy, we have a stranger in our midst, at least to this audience.
I know. Yeah, this is a very different dynamic, isn't it?
It is.
Anyone who's a Battlefield fan will have no idea who the hell I am. I'm just some random British guy who's just turned up.
He's a star boy. We've got a star boy in our midst. So we're all huge fans of Battlefield. Obviously, we're doing a podcast on Battlefield. But unknown to many, Mark is also a big fan of Battlefield. And we're all super pumped for the future of Battlefield 2042. But before we get into the main topic, Mark, what are some of your experiences with Battlefield?
So from like a really young age, like my uncle played Battlefield all the time. Like, I think he had like Bad Company 2 on his PC. So when I was over at my cousin's, like me and my brother and my cousin, we'd kind of sneak on there a little bit, play a bit of that. And just every time I was over there, pretty much, you know, when Battlefield 3 came out, he was playing there. I remember one of my main like experiences is Caspian Border. I tried to fly a jet and I just had no idea what the hell I was doing. And then I remember my dad talked about Battlefield quite a lot because I think it was, me and my brother had just got our PS3 and we were kind of thinking about games to get on it. And, you know, my dad knew my uncle played Battlefield and he knew it came from DICE and the Frostbite engine and how like amazing it is. So that was my main like introduction. So we got Battlefield 3 and we used to play that a lot. As soon as I got a PS4, I got Battlefield 4, played the heck out of that. Hardline I'm a really big fan of as well, which I know is somewhat controversial in the Battlefield community if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, I loved Hardline, honestly. There's the whole cops and robbers dynamic I thought was really cool, and it's where I mainly learned to snipe, to be honest. Like Black Ops 2 on the Wii U, bit unorthodox, but there we go. Black Ops 2 on the Wii U and Battlefield Hardline are where I learned to snipe. So
wow,
yeah, that's that. And then I didn't play Battlefield 1 and 5 so much as the World War settings don't interest me an awful lot, but I enjoyed both of those reasonably well. But I'm very excited for Battlefield 2042, going back to the modern day sort of near future setting, because I just feel like that's the best place to be in terms of content, to be honest.
So I want to take a little bit of a side tangent here, because I have never played Hardline. I want to get you guys talking about Hardline. What was Hardline in the history of Battlefield?
It was a Battlefield game to start.
No way. That's incredible.
Yeah, I know. It's a big shock. It's a big shock. It was the one after 4 and before 1, right? I think it was in the middle of that.
Yeah, it was. So, didn't it launch like it was? It wasn't a full $60, right?
I don't think so. And it came out a pretty like short. It wasn't like a 2-year difference. I think it was 1 year between. I'm pretty sure 2013 and 2016. So I think it came out like maybe a year and a half, sort of after Battlefield 4.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it was Visceral who made it, right? It was mostly
it wasn't
games.
like fully. I think DICE I think DICE had like a hand in it, but it was mostly them. So it was kind of like it was essentially like a spin-off, really. It was a fun little like tangent, I guess you would say.
It was pretty much just cops and robbers sort of thing, really. So one side was the police, the other side was not good people, basically. Criminals, that's the word I was looking for. It was mostly set in like Miami, not necessarily like Florida, Miami sort of area, I believe. But no, it was really cool, I thought. Some really cool gadgets, like a grappling hook that you could shoot, and it's like a zip wire gun, so you'd shoot the zip wire, that would put that on, you can like, you know, zoom across buildings and skyscrapers on that. Some pretty cool cars and some interesting soundtracks to it. Yeah, it was just overall, I just thought it was a really fun game, and I think it was just a really interesting take on the Battlefield series as a whole, because normally we're used to, all out warfare, but now we're actually playing cops and robbers in a similar dynamic. So yeah, it was cool.
Yeah, it was a very interesting premise for a game. I remember when they announced it, and there was a lot of it was a very divisive game. Like, a lot of people hated it and a lot of people loved it, but it was definitely a pretty cool little concept, I guess, for a game that we hadn't really seen. Like, I don't think I've ever really seen, other than I guess Payday in games like that, where you are the robber yourself, but they're obviously not quite the same. So I'd never really seen anything like that before, and I thought it definitely wasn't one of my favorites, but it was fun for what it was, I thought.
Yeah. I think something else that's really interesting is that when you're around between the ages of 4 and 11, when you're in school, one of the main playground games is Cops and Robbers. So it's kind of one of those things that you grow up sort of playing that every now and again. Almost a bit of nostalgia for me in that sense. It wasn't the most popular playground game we played, but it was certainly something we touched on every now and again. So it was cool to be able to actually essentially live that experience in a way through that game.
Yeah, I'd always heard people. The main thing I heard from Battlefield Hardline was it was a very, like Sammy said, divisive game. It was a spin-off. It was very interesting to see a smaller scale Battlefield game. And I think what really messed up, because from what Wiki says, it came out in 2015, which is quite the weird time to release anything. Battlefield related. What was it? Battlefield got its last update 2014? Battlefield 4 2014 or something along those lines. Maybe even
it would have been I think it was maybe early 26. Oh no, yeah, it might have been late 2015. I can't remember, but it was a weird. I remember at the time it was a weird time because we knew that there'd be a new Battlefield in Battlefield 1. We didn't really know what it was yet, but we kind of knew that was going to be probably coming out 2016, and then they released this, and people, I think that's kind of why it was a bit divisive, because I think a lot of people thought this was the main entry.
Yeah.
And it was kind of oh, this isn't the full game. This isn't, what we expected. So it was good fun. It wasn't a bad game, but I think it was just it was kind of the same deal almost as Squadrons. People were oh, this is just a expansion of Starfighter Assault, which it obviously wasn't, but that's the kind of vibe that people got from it. So people were kind of oh, this isn't a full game and stuff like that. And I think that was the main downfall. It was just the release time of it, I guess.
Yeah. You don't really release a little spin-off game around the same time that you'd be prepping for the mainline game.
Yeah.
Really strange. But also, I'd love to see more of those smaller experiences in the Battlefield franchise. I think there's a room for it. I think there is a room for it. And speaking on that, let's talk about kind of the world of Battlefield 2042 and how this game is specifically built to grow. So we've got an almost unheard of amount of developers working on this game. We've seen recently around how the playtests have been going on with the weird state that the playtest is in, with the NDAs getting broken left, right, and center, and people sharing all kinds of gameplay. It's almost like they planned it.
Yeah, I feel like they must have, because they must have known this was going to happen. I don't know how naive they would have to be to think oh, everyone's going to stick to the rules because they've got everything to lose, when in reality no one cares. They have nothing to lose. Now they might, because they're saying that they might ban their EA accounts, but they didn't know that going in. So
yes,
people just went, who cares? I'll just share it because I'm not going to lose my channel. I'm not going to, I'm not a YouTuber if I'm just some random person. So they don't care about their channel getting deleted or anything like that. So it was definitely a weird way to do it, but it could just be their marketing plan.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is when you're going into stuff like this, leaks will always happen, especially when it's a big Battlefield game like this that has got so many people excited. It's gonna happen. So yeah, I mean, like there's this. I know there's this one channel who's got like 1K subs, and he's posted like. When I saw a couple days ago, he had posted like 4 different videos of gameplay already, so it was just quite interesting. One of the things though that I was a little bit confused about was I thought that the playtest was originally meant to be in a like white box form, but it's not. But I guess it's probably because they pushed it back and then it's a different build. But
yeah, there was a pretty well-known leaker and kind of coverer of Battlefield on Twitter. His name's not on the top of my head, but kind of like follow up on last week's episode. We have had some more discussions on the playtest. So originally it was going to be Originally it was announced that it was going to be like the Battlefield players are going to be the only people invited, and it's going to be high-level feedback. It ended up being more of like a technical test of the servers and of crossplay is what it ended up being. Freeman, part of the Battlefield team, has kind of given us a little more details on that. And one of the things, like you mentioned earlier, he kind of like dropped the bomb on all these people leaking that if you do leak and break NDA, you could be if you have a channel, it's going to get a community strike on it. And if you don't have a channel, your account will get a strike on it and could limit you from playing Battlefield 2042, the beta, and future Battlefield titles.
That was so... I was reading through that, and when I got to that tweet, I was like, yes, Freeman, get him. I was so happy about that, because that's what it should be. Like, it's just so disrespectful to the team that they've given you an awesome opportunity, and they're just like, I don't care, I'm just going to leak it. Like, I don't think people understand how leaks affect, like, you know, the people... We saw it with Battlefront 2, where Benoit kind of talked about how frustrating it is, because they want that. They've put so much work into that moment when they can share the trailer and stuff, and then someone else leaks it, and it's just like that's moment's kind of stolen from them, and then it's like it kind of sets expectations before too. So now people are seeing this early playtest, which is not even remotely meant to be what the game's going to be. Like it's pretty much meant to be buggy, so they can get rid of the bugs. And so people are now going to be like, oh, this game looks like it's stuff like that. So I don't think people understand how damaging it can actually be, which...
Yeah.
Whether that was... Yeah, that's kind of why I'm confused that they did it, because it does sound an interesting way to like market the game by having leaks out there and stuff, but like it could also damage the game by if it looks really bad and stuff. So yeah, it's a weird way to do it.
Yeah, so that's a really good point, Sammy, because I saw numerous comments the other day saying like, oh, why are there NDAs on this? Why do they care? Like it's just gameplay and all that stuff. And it's just like, well, this leaked gameplay is essentially going to be first impressions for a lot of people, whether that's them playing the game or watching the game. And if they're seeing this where, it's not quite got as, it might not have the best graphics that they were hoping for, but it's because it's alpha gameplay. Or there might just be loads of bugs and loads of issues and stuff like that. People are going to be seeing this for the first time being like, oh, this doesn't look that good. That's really disappointing. I'm not going to get it now because it's so buggy. But that's the thing. A lot of people don't realize when they're watching these videos is that it is alpha gameplay. It's going to be buggy, especially when you're putting the game out for the first time across, I imagine, well, it's Europe and US, I believe. So, but it's still, across two very large land masses. So servers are very much going to be stress tested. Crossplay capabilities are going to be tested, and this is a big thing. Technically speaking, for the developers, this is huge because it's going to get a lot of really good feedback for them to be able to fix it before the beta. The beta is going to get even more data for them in similar ways, technically speaking, and also just player impressions on gameplay and such. But it's all really important technically for developers now, and a lot of people don't understand that, and it always comes down to the just simple lack of knowledge in how games actually work.
Yeah.
And I saw, we saw it all the time with Battlefront. We saw it probably a bit with Squadrons as well, to be fair. But people who complain about games and just, I mean, like, if you're not satisfied with something, or if something's quite simply ridiculous, then like fair enough. But when it's an alpha game, when it's alpha footage and it's buggy as hell, and people start complaining about that and crying on Twitter about how bad it looks, like, it's like people who have a knowledge of how game development works, even if it's just in the smallest of bits, they'll understand that this is going to be the case, so they're not going to go and cry about it. And they either tend to not say anything at all, or they'll focus a bit more on the gameplay and say like, oh, this looks quite cool. Whereas people that have no understanding whatsoever, or just a simple lack of, they'll rage and they'll scream at the developers, and they'll be like, this isn't good enough. And it's just, that's what really frustrates me. Like, it really gets on my nerves so much. And I mean, it's common decency as well. I think even if you don't have an understanding of how games work, it's common decency to not be a dick. So it's like, it's simple. Like, I 3-4 years ago, I had no idea how games were made, but I was, if something was buggy, I wasn't going to cry about it, and I'd be understanding. But having studied games now for 3 solid years, and done YouTube on games for a few years now as well, almost 4 years now, I have a much better understanding than I did 4 or 5 years ago. So I have, even more common decency to not be a dick. So it's just education. It's that simple.
Yeah, that's what it seems to be. Like, just the lack of, like, I've seen people just on like Twitter threads that are like talking about it, and they're like, oh, this game's trash, like, don't even bother buying it, I've played it and it's terrible. And I'm like, mate, you're playing a technical test. I don't think you quite understand the word technical. You're
lucky it looks as good as it is, because like they're in a rough spot. Like Mark said, they were going to do a gray box thing, gray box.
It wasn't even going to be like textures. It was just going to be a gray flat like land, and they were just going to shoot each other and stuff. So I don't think people understand how early of a build it is. They even said, like Freeman said in that thing, that this is also not even a current build. This is like a couple weeks old, and that's a couple weeks old when it's happened. So it's, I just think people, that's kind of my, like, why I'm curious about how they did it this way, because they just surely knew that was going to happen. And that's kind of why I feel like tech tests have to stay as like a more closed environment and get that stuff sorted, and then release it to the public a little bit later. But they obviously, I don't know, they've done really well with the marketing, so I'm just kind of thinking that they must have planned this, and it must be part of their marketing or something. I'm not really sure.
It's such a weird spot for them, because they need that information, and they need the wider scope of people, but also they must have known that the wider scope of people means there will be a drastically higher amount of leaks. So it's a strange spot for them to be in, because they need that information, and they've said it's given them great information. So it's rough. On last week's episode of the podcast, on the YouTube thread, we have this lovely gentleman that I will not name, because I do not want to give him the joy of being mentioned. He says this: at least do your research and watch the leaks and find out why people are leaking it. A playtest should be playable and not gimped to the point that is not fun at all. Log 30 FPS. Why? I mean, who plays anything at 30 FPS? It feels so wrong and offers no feeling of what the game will be like. Even if they are just testing servers while at 30 FPS and not able to change keybinds, FOV slider broken, and if you adjust it, messes up the game. He's telling, like, it is the exact point, the exact points he's making is the exact points why it's in the playtest. They don't want a representation of this game in the playtest. They want it to be literally just a server test. Like, they're not testing anything other than that.
It's literally in the name. Yeah. That's the thing.
It's not a gameplay test. That's what people don't get. They're not testing, like, they're probably barely testing balancing. They don't probably give it if there's an OP gun. They'll sort that in the beta. This is testing, like, whether jumping mechanics work and whether fall damage exists and stuff like that. That's the type of stuff they test, not like how balanced it is and how smooth the gameplay is and the graphics and stuff. That's just not what they're trying to do. So you can just tell the people who just don't know what is going on when they say comments like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing is, in terms of like OP weapons and stuff, like they'll be getting data for everything pretty much. So to be fair, balancing changes will be able to be made, but
more than likely, since this is over a month-old build, it's going to 100% not be representative.
It's going to be different already.
Yeah.
But it's literally in the name though of technical tests. Like that's the thing. They're literally, and even when DICE first said that there was going to be a technical test, they literally were talking about how they were going to be testing servers and crossplay capabilities and stuff like that. Like that is them. The main aim of this is to be able to test servers and crossplay. Like that's the two core elements of why they're doing this, and having a larger number of people on this test is really beneficial for stuff like that. But obviously then it does lead to a lot more people going out and leaking it. And to be honest, like I mean, I was literally talking to my friend about this yesterday, about how Activision will stomp down on any leak and strike it down and all that stuff, and EA from my experience don't tend to do that. I mean, he was saying that any FIFA leak will get striked down like really hard, and that's just how the FIFA kind of community side is. But then with any Star Wars leaks, there was never anything done about that. And Battlefield, over the last few years, from my experience, there hasn't been an awful lot. But when it comes to stuff like this, that's literally explicit NDA stuff, and if they break it, then absolutely stomp on them. Don't let them play again with that EA account. Like,
yeah,
it's actually crazy to see how leaks have become a part of gaming. Because funny that you say about Activision, because that's spot on. They've always they've banned like channels for leaking, and then the other day Vanguard got leaked and they bought into it. They released a tweet with a GIF
actual
from the game
footage.
and had like leaks and rumors like as the plane's coming over and stuff. It's
funny.
like weird to see how they're like embracing it, because it was the same with Battlefield when that happened. There was leaks for ages, like nearly a month, and they didn't even release the trailer. And it almost just makes you think, like, do they just know that it's going to happen and now they're just like
it's inevitable
buying into it and
point.
making the most of it now? Like they're just using it to their advantage. So it's just it's definitely weird to see how it's gone from being like straight away, if there's a leak, that channel gets deleted and they don't talk about it and stuff. Whereas now it's like both of these companies are just like, oh well, let's just make the most of it, kind of thing.
I mean, this is, you kind of have to nowadays. That's the thing, because the amount of people out there who have sources, or people, developers have friends that they'll trust, and
and development is a large team.
It's going to consist of hundreds of people, and they all have friends that, or family that they might talk to them about their work, because they trust them not to say anything, but then they might say something to someone and that gets out, and it's just like, it's impossible. It really is difficult to keep everything so tightly under just so under control in this day and age anyway. Like it can be done. I mean, for the most part, Squadrons, there was never any leaks about that, apart from like that one Project Maverick image leak. That was pretty much the only thing we got. And that game was in development for 3 years. So fair play to them for EA and Motive for really keeping that under wraps. But that's I mean, it's a bit different because this is like a Battlefield, with it being so long-standing and big in the gaming community, so it's going to be a bit different. But
I think also just because Battlefield 5 was like a letdown to a lot of people, that people were like so thirsty for stuff that they just will do anything to get their hands on some information.
Inject it into my veins.
So I think it's kind of like, not only Battlefield alone, it would just be like that, but then that just adds to it even further, that people are so desperate to find out about the game.
And I see that's a good point though, with Battlefield 5, being what it was in the end, and it not being in the eyes of most of the fans, it wasn't a good Battlefield. All this alpha gameplay getting out with it being buggy and all that, and people reacting to it, like, that's not going to be a good look. Like, that's kind of why DICE really want to keep everything under wraps as much as possible, because they want this game to launch as smoothly and as best as possible. Everyone's first impressions need to be really solid for the most part. So it just kind of sucks that all this alpha gameplay is getting out and, people are crying about it because it doesn't look so good.
Yeah.
I get that, people are passionate, of course. That's one way to put it. But,
yes, definitely.
It is quite the predicament.
But with that, let's talk about some of the future things and how the game is prepping for the future. So this game is huge. This game is massive, like to the point where I'm concerned that it is too big. It's that big. But
that's what she said.
I was biting my tongue so much.
I had to.
Yes, it had to be said.
That's what she said.
It is one of the biggest and most impactful releases probably this year, considering how many games have been delayed and that this game is so close to its launch. I want to talk a little bit about the future and how this is specifically designed to grow. So
increasing file sizes.
Who knows how big this game will actually be? I
am genuinely curious about this.
Yeah.
Because I know
hundreds, to be honest.
I know PS5's got really good compression, comparatively speaking to like PS4. So it will be interesting to see the difference. I mean, PS5 will still no doubt be a lot bigger because it's so different.
Because it's going to have the 4K assets. It's going to have. It's going to be needed to be a lot larger.
Huge. To be fair, I think this game is obviously massive, but I think the reason why they've only really gone for like these three main experiences is just because of how big the scope is, with Portal and the sheer size of the maps for Conquest and Breakthrough, is it as well? Conquest and Breakthrough, the two core modes. Yeah. So it's just, it's crazy. I'm honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if it was like it was pushing 150 or something, to be honest.
Yeah.
That's a wayward shout, but
that's almost my expectation, to be honest. When you look at, and it's kind of different because Warzone isn't optimized very well, but Warzone's like 100 plus, and that's literally one map, and the map's like the same size. It's only just bigger than, which map is it? The Antarctica map, I'm pretty sure. It's only like just bigger than that. So, and it's not like 4K and stuff, so I'm definitely a bit nervous, but I think they also optimize their games a bit, because like Battlefield 5 is probably bigger than Warzone when you consider all that content, and it's I'm pretty sure it's only like 65 or something.
Yeah, so, I recently downloaded it again, and it was like 65 to 70. Battlefront, with all of the updates, ended up being around 90. So Battlefront 2 was nearing 90 with all of that content. So it's a tough place. Like we don't have any comparisons to see it because we don't have a necessarily made for next gen version of any of DICE's games. So they could be smaller, they could be bigger.
It's going to be definitely interesting to see, because that's like a constant complaint that I hear about Warzone, is just like every time there's an update, people are like, I had to delete this other game just to freaking fit this update in. So it's something you don't want to have for sure.
Yeah, and if you look at next-gen console sizes too, like PlayStation's, while it says 825, if you factor in the system software, it goes down to about 600. And then with Xbox, they say 1 terabyte, but it's actually around 800. So you are definitely limited. So you could only fit maybe 5 Warzones on a PS5.
Yeah, that's the thing. If you have Warzone and this, like, that's probably going to take up nearly half your storage. So it's it's not the end of the world for me. It's like I'll probably delete a ton of games if I have to fit it, but it's like, yeah, you don't want it to be. I don't want to have to download fucking 200 gigabytes because my internet's terrible. So
Yeah.
it's I'm really curious to see that actually, because that's just something I constantly hear about Warzone, and yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it goes.
So some of the leaks also included some of the specs of the requirements, and overall it looks pretty good. I mean, DICE is historically fantastic at optimizing for running on like you could run Battlefront on a potato and it would look good.
Yeah, I actually used to, like, my old PC before I upgraded, it wasn't that good. It wasn't like terrible, but it was not enough to run it on like ultra settings and stuff, but it would run perfectly on, like, if I put it to pretty low settings, it would run perfectly. So they obviously have done well at optimizing pretty much every game. The same with Battlefield and stuff. So
Battlefield, Apex, Battlefront, Squadrons, even, like, they were all very well optimized games. And on that same note, like, where do you see the, like, we have, I'm gonna say the word because everyone's saying it, but it's a limited selection of maps in terms of the main Battlefield experience. Obviously, we've got more in Battlefield Portal, but for the mainline conquest mode, like, there's seven, albeit they are huge. They're huge, but if you're looking at it just from a perspective of numbers on the back of a box, it's lower. Where do you see the game growing from there?
I mean, that's the thing. If you look at it from a numbers perspective, 7 doesn't sound like an awful lot, which is a bit of a shame. But then if you look at it in with a more optimistic side point of view on it, you know, these are 7 huge maps.
The biggest in Battlefield.
Massive maps. Yeah, exactly. So it's like, you know, there's only 7, kind of a shame, but they're huge. Okay, so I don't know. I think the sheer size of these maps kind of make up for the numbers, and you know, we're obviously going to get more as the game goes on. I mean, you know, if they're genuinely going to be doing a Battlefield game every 2 years, then I'm not expecting Battlefield 2042 to get content for that long, really. Like, it could just be that typical year and a half, you know, year to a year and a half maybe, and then they'll stop and then they'll bring out the next Battlefield. So, you know, I'm hoping that with each, you know, major content drop that we, you know, potentially get, or like with, because there's going to be battle passes and stuff like that as far as I'm aware. So, you know, they're going to be going with that kind of seasonal approach in a way. So
yeah, I'm
kind of hoping that at least every season we get a new big map, because the seasons will probably last anywhere between 60 to 90 days.
And I think they said the first year they'll have 4 total seasons.
That's right.
Of content.
So yeah, it's going to be roughly like a 3-month period, which, considering how many people are working on the team, depends how many they keep on, because who knows, they might hopefully go and make a Battlefront 3 after this. But
we pray.
Yeah, but if they've got a big team working on it, like, and they've obviously planned ahead, like they're already working on post-launch content, so there is a chance we could get a map every season, which I'm not going to like hold on hopes for that, because that's quite a lot of content, but it's not undoable. They said that they've kind of closed down on the time that it's taken them to make maps, because remember, like with Battlefront 2, they said it took them about a year to make Geonosis. I think they said 11 months or something. So they've gone down to like 6 months with Battlefield.
6 months to a year.
Yeah. So unless they're going to make a freaking massive one or something, then obviously that'll take a long time. But if they make those like mid-sized maps, I don't think that's, you know, too big of an ask to get one every season, even like a smaller map every other season or something.
Yeah. I think with was it Devastation in Rotterdam on Battlefield 5? I think I remember seeing that a developer saying that took 6 people 18 months. But
yeah,
that's obviously like only like 6 people. That's not a big team.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is though, more isn't always better. That's the thing. Because you do want a relatively small team because communication is so much easier. But still, I mean, 6 people to work on one map's not a lot of people.
No, not at all.
And 18 months is a long time. So yeah, 6 months to a year doesn't surprise me in any way. especially if they can firstly reuse the asset, reuse a lot of the assets.
Yeah, and they've said they're also using a lot of like AI and cloud technology too to help develop these maps much quicker than previous Battlefield. So that's going to be really cool to see what that changes. Are we going to see an AI built Battlefield map in the next 2 years where it's basically 80% AI and then kind of just customized from there?
Yeah, that's actually a really exciting like prospect, because when you think about it, a lot of games out there, I'm thinking of games like even like Minecraft and like Age of Empires and stuff, they just randomly generate their own maps when you start a game. So it's obviously not quite the same thing, but the fact that they could get an AI to essentially like randomly generate it over, however many months and stuff.
Yeah, like you could give it a set of assets and an era and be like, yo, every time someone boots up, give them a unique map. Like that'd be wild.
So interesting to see if that can. The way technology's going, I wouldn't be surprised if that is a thing in like 5 to 10 years, where it's just like there is no set maps in the game. It's just like you just join a multiplayer game and it just gives you like, it just does a Minecraft and just like generates a map on the spot. That'd be so weird, but so awesome.
That would be awesome to see, but it would be so fiddly because you have to take, with it being like a large scale first person shooter, you need to take into account like objective positions, choke points.
Yeah,
and all
but
these
like
different
in
formats.
5 years, AI, you could set those parameters. Like you could set this is the optimal map. So what we're saying is, if you're looking into getting into map design or level creation, switch your education to algorithms.
But yeah, it's definitely the way that like AI is going with like, it's just progressing so quickly that it's, as of right now, that obviously sounds completely undoable. Like you said, it'd be a mess. Like
it'd be like No Man's Sky at launch.
Yeah, there'd just be maps that would be just absolutely terrible, and like the objective would be out in the ocean or something. What is this?
Yeah.
But if they can progress the tech enough in the next 5 to 10 years or something, it'd just be interesting to see how that works.
Yeah.
It's
crazy. The idea doesn't sound that far fetched, honestly. Like, as long as you have all these parameters set, you have like all these.
Yeah, and it's obviously going to have to go through a layer of human interaction as well.
Yeah.
It
needs to like cross check it and stuff. Yeah,
because the thing is, all these things would need to be tested, and because otherwise, you could end up with the worst map in the world. Like, they could easily have like AI. Well, I say easily, but in the future, there no doubt like AI will build a map with all these parameters set, and then they'll be tweaked by humans to make sure that it's actually enjoyable. But like AI making games doesn't sound that far fetched. It's obviously a way off, and it will always need that human level of interaction with it. But
definitely,
I mean, it doesn't surprise me that DICE has brought map creation, even at those sizes down from like a year plus to 6 to 12 months. I think that's absolutely fair enough, and I would say, as just with the way technology is advancing and the way game development's going, like it doesn't surprise me, and I think that would be an expectation set, really, because at the end of the day, I mean, if you look at Unreal Engine, for example, with what Epic Games are doing, they're going for like super like user friendly and artist friendly game engine, and every update and change and a new addition to the engine is for the overall creation to just be as simple as possible and as quick as possible.
Democratizing game creation is what it's doing. It's trying to make it as easy as possible to as many people as possible, so there are more experiences made. So I don't know how we've not talked about this on the podcast, but we have mentioned that they're going to push the Battlefield franchise on a 2-year release schedule. So let's talk about that to finish off this episode. Let's talk about what this means. Like, we thought this was going to be the game for like at least 4 years, right? We're thinking like this game could go on for 4 years with continued updates. They've set it up to be grown really well. But now we hear kind of like, oh, okay, so we're going to get Battlefield 2042, and then some game later, Battlefield 7244 is going to be coming out in 2023.
Yeah, it's not what I expected, but looking at Call of Duty and Warzone, I think the thing that they're going to be doing is probably Portal and Hazard Zone are going to be their Warzone, and they'll release games around that and implement them into Portal. And it's hard to tell because we don't know what Hazard Zone is yet, but I think that's going to be their thing, is having like Portal be like that Battlefield hub. That obviously that's what we were all calling it before, and having that as like the center of Battlefield. And then they'll release Battlefield 7, and that'll be a whole new game. Maybe it goes to, the Vietnam War, and that's the new game. And then that also gets added into Portal, so then we can still play the 2042 content. We can use 2042 weapons in Vietnam and stuff like that. That's judging by the 2-year thing that they mentioned. That's probably, I don't want to say my expectation, because that's, we just don't know yet. But that's kind of what I'm expecting that they'll do. Kind of what Warzone's doing, where Warzone is obviously their money maker, and it's the main, what most people are playing, and then they just release Call of Duty games around that, and which kind of in a way sucks a little bit, because I think the actual Call of Duty games are kind of suffering from that, because they just don't really care as much about them.
Yeah.
But I think because Portal it's not quite the same as Warzone, where it's like this, it's just to do with the content. So I think hopefully it wouldn't affect the actual games. Obviously they would want to still focus on the actual game that they're releasing, but then just add that content into Portal, and maybe Hazard Zone, depending on what that is as well.
See, I feel like I think Battlefield, I think Portal's going to be like the main central hub for Battlefield going forward. So it's almost going to feel like every 2 years, these new Battlefield games coming out, we'll hopefully have Portal, for the foreseeable future. But it, in a way, almost just feels like all of these games coming out, every 2 years, in a way, just going to be large expansions of Portal in a way. Because, Portal is going to be very, as you say, is essentially the Warzone of Battlefield. Obviously, it's not a battle royale, but it's got that, that's the main attraction sort of thing going forward, and that's going to be their main focal point. With all the content going forward. But in the next Battlefield game, they'll hopefully have all the Battlefield Portal content we've got now. And that's obviously going to include 2042 stuff. And then in the next Battlefield game, we'll have all of the Battlefield Portal stuff from now, plus the new content from this next game, and hopefully that will keep being a reoccurring thing going forward.
Interesting.
The only thing with that though is obviously as you go on game on game, the Battlefield Portal is obviously going to get massive and will only get bigger. It's going to include all of the Battlefield 2042, every single bit of Battlefield 2042 content, but only some content from the older Battlefields, which obviously makes sense because these are older games, but going forward into the next Battlefield, you're not necessarily going to want to have and to remake essentially all of these, every single piece of Battlefield 2042 content on top of the previous Battlefield games. So they could, in future Battlefields, change it up. So maybe instead of Caspian Border and something else, they might go with 2 or 3 different maps from Battlefield 3 or 4. They might change it up. It's going to be really interesting to see how it goes. I agree with Sammy with in that Battlefield Portal's very likely going to be the main central hub, and then they'll just be making games every 2 years. I think to stay competitive, 2 years is understandable. Like from a business perspective, 2 years makes the most sense.
Yeah, but I'm also kind of disappointed that it was 2 years.
Yeah,
like
me
I was
too.
hoping they would say Battlefield's going to be a service that they are going to support for a while, and then there are going to be new iterations of that service. But we're going to launch something as a foundation with Battlefield 2042, and it's going to design the future of the franchise for the next 3 years, and then there's 4 years, and there's going to be a new iteration of that said service. Like, that's what I was hoping for, because that's how games are going forward. Like, no longer, we're seeing with Call of Duty, like, they are definitely limited. Like you said, Sammy, they're limited by that set release schedule, and we could have so many more unique experiences as it with a service. And I'd love to see at some point maybe like a free offering from Battlefield. I think that is a franchise that could do that very well.
Yeah. I'm kind of the same, that I'm a bit like disappointed. I would want this to be, and obviously we haven't played, so I don't know if it's going to be good, but it seems everything seems great. That like I want this to be a 3 to 5 year game. And I'm not going to complain if we get another game in 2 years. Like, that's awesome. But it just, I don't know. That was where they went wrong with Battlefield 5. It was a 2-year release. They didn't have the time to work on it. So they've got more teams involved. Maybe that's why they're able to do it. I'm not too sure. But it's... I don't know about worrying, but it's just a bit like I'm skeptical about how it's going to go, because they kind of, I feel like they learned their lesson with Battlefield 5 and they pushed this back to be a 3-year cycle, and then it almost just feels like they're trying to compete with Call of Duty, which I don't think they need to do that.
No, they're completely different games. They fill different areas entirely.
Yeah, and they've got the Battle Pass stuff. They've got like ways to keep bringing in money. They don't need to release a new one. Like, just release content and make sure the battle passes are good, and do like in 3 years release like a big expansion to where like there's a new, there's a fourth experience, and we've got the main game has its own portal, and then add something else that's big and have that as like almost like a relaunch of the game, where they, we've seen it with Rainbow Six. They've like relaunched the game with a new cover and all that type of stuff.
Exactly.
I don't know if they need to put a whole new game out there, because it has that possibility of going really wrong if it's not polished and stuff, and then all the work they've done to correct this, that could just go straight out the window.
Yeah, and you look at the past of DICE. I'm going to bring it up. I'm going to bring it up here. We have seen in the past that they underestimate how many people to put on a support team, and the support for their games suffers, and they have to move people around. So they've got the people that are working on Battlefield. They shut down Battlefield 5 and Battlefront 2 to work on this game. Like, I don't trust them to be able to get this game ready to go and supported, and then 2 years later put out another game of the same scale or larger. I don't see that being a thing that they can do.
Yeah. See, I don't see it either, because if that is to be the case, then they need to start work on it now, or have already started on it.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, they said in that, they've said that this game so far has been a 3-year project, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
If they want to release another Battlefield in 2 years' time, they need to start working on it now. They need to have an idea of what they want that game to be, and just for pre-production to begin, so that once this game has launched, they can have a bunch of people moving over slowly to this next Battlefield game, because otherwise it's completely unrealistic. And I just don't like 2-year dev cycles, because it really, especially with Battlefield and also just Battlefront, because it forces you to really limit what you're going for with the game, and you're just worrying about getting it out as on time. And I mean, to be honest, I'm just not a big fan of setting release expectations so early.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I know it's a bit harder with a massive corporate video game company, but
it's a marketing team deciding a technical application.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, they don't. The people who are working on the marketing and when it releases and all that type of stuff, I highly doubt they work on the game. Like, they're not developers. So it's kind of like, it's that whole thing where they were talking about certain people were saying, oh, we should make a tornado, and the technical team were like, oh no, please don't make us do that. Like, obviously there's a lot of things that I feel like they kind of set those up, and then the rest of the team has to be like, oh god, here we go, and they've got to like they have to fulfill that, the schedule and stuff. So it does make me nervous for sure.
Yeah, the thing that annoys me about setting release expectations like that is it's a business decision and not a game developer decision.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's just it's just frustrating. I mean, it's like, look how many games. I mean, I know COVID's obviously had a major impact, but so many games were delayed, and I mean, Cyberpunk, for God's sake, that was delayed so many times. And it's like, it's like, I mean, if you internal, fine, like have internal deadlines because they're obviously going to be really important. But in terms of, I just think it's a mistake of EA already to go and be like, yeah, we're going to have another Battlefield in 2 years' time.
Yeah, this one isn't even out yet. Why are they announcing it?
I mean, this isn't exactly. This game's not even out yet.
Yeah.
And they're now already saying, oh yeah, so we've got another one in 2 years' time, by the way. Be excited for that. And it's just, it just feels unreasonable and not necessary. Like, I love that Rainbow Six came out 7 years ago and is still going really strong.
Yeah.
I really want DICE to work on Battlefront 3 and just keep that going for 5+ years, because it's a game that's going to be able to go and do those things, and with Star Wars being the way it is going forward, like, there's so much content that you'd be able to add to that. And having, I mean, Call of Duty having yearly releases, and Battlefield clearly going to be going for a biannual release schedule. Where do you go? Like, okay, we're going near future now.
Yeah.
So we've just had World War One. We then had World War Two. We're now going near future. Where do you go next? Okay, you could go a lot
nearer future.
I mean, you could go even nearer future, like like now, or you go further in the future. I mean, you could do Vietnam War, as Sammy said
2142,
earlier,
baby.
Yeah, remake that. And it's just, but when you're going for, when you're a first-person shooter franchise, guns haven't been around for, in the sense that we really know, for that long. We don't have all of these, amazing areas of just eras of time to really focus on and be like, okay, well, because if you're Call of Duty and you're doing annual releases, you're going to be repeating the same cycle every 4 years. Really, you could go World War, you could just do like a World War game, Cold War game, modern day game, future game, and they'll just rinse and repeat that every 4 years. And it's just like, what's the point?
And that's literally what we're seeing. Like, we saw how poorly COD World War 2 did. Like, that's probably one of the most disliked Call of Duties ever.
Yes.
And then this year they're just releasing another one by the same
try it again, guys.
company. It's like, do you not? Yeah, I don't know. That's my main issue with Call of Duty. I think the gameplay and everything's great, but the fact that there's a new one every year, by the time you get into it, it's 6 months old, and then it's like, may as well just wait till the new one. Like, it's just such a weird way of doing it. And like you said, there's only so many things that they can do that if they just do it every 2 years, in 10 years from now, we'll have every era covered, and we'll have to start redoing them again. And it's just,
there's only so many wars.
With
guns.
There's literally like World War One, World War Two. I guess you could have Vietnam, but that's such a niche. Like, that's just two sides in a small. Like, it went for a long time, but it's a pretty small little thing. And then there's the Cold War and like modern day.
I would love to see the Confederate War. That could be pretty sweet. But
Yeah,
I
that'd
don't.
be
But
pretty
again, I don't think it would suit its own game. Like the Vietnam War and the Confederate War, it would be like more on the scale of like a Battlefield Hardline than a Battlefield
Yeah,
2042.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, look at Bad Company 2. They released like a Vietnam DLC because that's
Yeah.
how small it is. It was like an expansion to the game. So
Great point.
yeah, there's really only, and even World War One. I think they've done that now. I don't think they can do World War One again. To be honest, they've already touched it. And there's not enough.
Yeah.
There wasn't
Been
enough
there, done
weapons and stuff that they can really redo it. Otherwise, it would just be exactly the same thing. Obviously, the scale and all that'll be bigger. But if they released Battlefield 1.1, then it's like it's just the same game with bigger maps and stuff. So
Yeah.
there's
and
really only a limited amount of stuff to do.
And the thing is, as well, though, just look at how much the industry has changed with this over the last few years. You know,
Yeah.
like, 7 years ago, it was like we were still in season pass territory where you'd spend $40 and then you get a year's worth of free content. 7 years on, we're now getting free post-launch content for a lot of games out there.
Yeah.
And we now have battle passes.
And this is the first time Battlefield's doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I don't get. They've only just bought into the Battle Pass. This is really well, I guess they've had live service in the past, but it's like this is really the first true live service where you've got a Battle Pass and it's set up that it can go forever. Like they could literally make this a 10-year long game if they wanted, but yeah, they've finally done that, and now they're like, oh, but there's going to be another game in 2 years. It's just a weird situation.
That's the thing. It's it's a business decision really, and it's frustrating because as a fan, it's like, well, if this game comes out and it's genuinely the best Battlefield game I've ever played, then I'm gonna want content for it for a long time because I know there's so much potential for that. And it's like I don't see the point in them going to make another Battlefield game until several years later. But then again, at that point, it's like, where do you go? Like, what setting do you go on? And that's ultimately the harsh reality of doing like a real world sort of game. I mean, the beauty of Star Wars is that you're in this massive galaxy where you literally could do absolutely anything and everything. Yeah. There are different eras that are so very different, and when you're focusing on the real world, it's like, how far do you go? Like, does Battlefield, in 2 years' time go into space? Like, do you go on different planets? Like, is this just basically Battlefront but IRL? Like, what's going on? Like, it's just, I don't, look at people who, people complain about FIFA all the time as well. Like, FIFA and all the sports games are yearly releases, and the same comment is made every time, which is, this is basically just the same game. Obviously, obviously it's not quite the same game, but it basically is. There are a lot of,
it's literally just like a roster update and like some slight.
And maybe they have a story mode
mechanics.
now.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, it's, it makes them so much money, so they're not going to stop doing it. But just I do, and like, that's the sports games. Like, I'm not going to.
Yeah. At what point does Battlefield become Call of Duty? Is our concern.
Yeah.
And then they become their competitor, and they've lost all of the things that made them unique.
Yeah.
I think if they try to compete with Call of Duty in the way that Call of Duty works, they won't win that. That's not the way to approach this. You
can't win that battle as Battlefield or DICE.
Yeah, it's too big of a game to take down that way. They need to be the unique game that people who play COD go, oh wow, like Battlefield's got destruction and look at the size of the maps and stuff. They need to have that uniqueness to the game that makes it, like, I'll be honest, if it was just the same type of game as COD, I'd buy COD because the gunplay is probably better in that game. So it's like,
in my opinion, as well.
The thing with Battlefield is just the scale and the team play aspects and stuff. If they just reduce all that and make it they'd obviously keep it, but if the scale of the maps isn't as big when they do a yearly or 2 yearly release, like, that's the thing that it has that it's just losing. So it's definitely a weird time to announce that, I think.
I mean, the thing is as well, though, is that the advantage that Call of Duty has in that sense is you've got 3 main studios working on this game, so they'll release a game, and then they won't release another game for 3 years because they've then got Treyarch and Infinity Ward, like Sledgehammer, for example. So it's just like, DICE doesn't have those capabilities, whereas Activision does. They've got 3 mainstream studios doing this thing for them. So
yeah, that's the thing. Like, technically, if Battlefield does one every 2 years, Call of Duty technically has a longer cycle than Battlefield because they have 3, dev companies working on it. So yeah, that's, I don't know, if they're taking 3 years to make Call of Duty and they're struggling, like it's kind of gone downhill, and then Battlefield tries to replicate that with the scale of the game. I just don't think that works whatsoever.
No. And the thing is as well, though, look at how well free-to-play games have done with like battle passes and paid cosmetics. Like people, instead of spending, because I mean with next gen games it's going to be like $70 up, right? So instead of spending $70 every 2 years, if they release some kind of free-to-play aspect, or they at least just make you pay for the game and then build the game off for like 5 years, ultimately people are going to be, people could easily go and spend $70 plus on battle passes or cosmetics and stuff like that they really like, I mean, obviously not everyone, digs into buying cosmetics and stuff like that, which is totally fair, but just if Battlefield went and released a free-to-play aspect, then they're going to make a lot of money from battle passes and paid cosmetics and stuff. And
the thing with battle pass is, like, if the game's free, like, look at Warzone. I absolutely have spent more money on Warzone than the game would have cost if it was a proper game, because you just buy something for $10 and it's like awesome, and then a month later you buy it again, and it kind of all adds up. But the good thing is you don't have to spend it at once, so I don't care about spending more on it because it's spread out over the time, and it's my choice. I don't have to do it, so I don't feel bad when I buy something. It's like, I may as well buy this, and then eventually you end up spending more on the game than you would if you just bought the game by itself.
I'm absolutely with you there, because I'm exactly the same with Fortnite. Yes, I still play Fortnite. Sorry, guys.
Okay, time to get Mark off the show.
But the thing is, that game came out in 2017, right? Battle Royale launched in September 2017, so it's almost been 4 years now. And in that 4-year period, I've easily spent a few $100 on that game from cosmetics.
I know people that spent thousands of dollars on that game.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. But the thing is, though, it's not like I'm spending loads and loads in one go. It's like...
Yeah, that's the thing. That's why it works, because you don't have to splash on it, kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Like, every now and again, they'll release a free pack. It comes with... not a free pack, but they'll release this pack that comes with a new skin, 600 V-Bucks, so the premium currency, like a weapon camo, a pickaxe, and stuff like that. Pretty much like a little loadout for this character. And it's like £4 now, so it's like, okay, I'll go and spend £4 on that, and that's like once every couple months.
And while you may question buying a $60 game, you will not fail to pick up a free game and then sink money into it. Like, it's free, I can spend $5 on it, and it's still less than it. You do that 5 times, and it's like, okay, I've spent $25 on this game.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I'm curious about with them having a paid game and a battle pass, is that I wonder if that's going to work. I wonder if people are going to be like, well, if it was free, I'd happily buy the battle pass, but I've already paid for the game. I can't afford to buy it and then buy the battle pass. So maybe the battle pass system doesn't work in this game because they've had to pay for the game.
There has been many articles I've read too that are like, if you have a paid game, you should not have a battle pass or in-game microtransactions. You should make up your money from the game sell, unless it's like, it is understandable if it's a free game and that's how you need to make your money. But it's like, I've spent $70 on this game, or if you pre-ordered the Ultimate Battle Incredible Edition, it's like $120. Like, seriously, people.
I'm personally fine with, I'll be buying the battle pass, but I definitely have considered that when I was thinking about it. I was like, wow, okay, so I buy the Warzone Battle Pass because that's free, so I don't really care, but I'm going to have to buy the game, and then a month after it launches, when they release the first Battle Pass, I've got to pay again for that. And it's like, it definitely, it's different for us because like we're so into gaming that it's just like an automatic buy for me. I won't even consider. I'll just buy it as soon as it comes out because it's just being a content creator, you just do that. Like whenever a game releases something, you just do it. But to the casual fan base, like I know so many people that will buy the game and then they're like, well, I can't now, we're in COVID, I'm not working as much, I can't afford to buy the Battle Pass now and stuff, so it's just going to be weird to see whether it even works. Like, I'm not sure the Battle Pass system will work the same as it has in Warzone and Apex and games like that.
Yeah. If there's a free-to-play element in the game, then it's totally fair enough, because, I mean, just look at Call of Duty and how that's been. Like, with Warzone, that's the free-to-play element of Call of Duty. Because, I mean, Cold War's got the same Battle Pass as Warzone.
That's true,
like,
yeah. They have
if you buy
game
Cold
and a Battle Pass,
Yeah, if you buy Cold War, but you don't play Warzone, but you want to buy the Battle Pass, you still have to buy the Battle Pass. But then if you want to go and play Warzone, that's the same thing. So it can work, but it needs to have some sort of free-to-play element to make it a lot more understandable.
Yeah,
and I think just play, essentially customer friendly, and it just more customer friendly in that sense.
That's a good point. I didn't actually think of Call of Duty having that. Like, it's the exact same. They have a paid game and then a Battle Pass, so it's probably not as bad as I'm making it out to be. But I personally don't think it's that big of a deal, but obviously for a lot of people out there it will be. But I mean, as long as there's no pay-to-win element in any way, shape, or form, which I know with Battlefield there won't be, then it's fine, honestly. But I do think they need to have a free-to-play element as well, because, I mean, they don't have that yet. I mean, look how popular Warzone got because it was free-to-play Call of Duty. Yeah. Well, I think Hazard Zone's confirmed, isn't it? That'll be free-to-play.
It is still up in the air, I believe, right? Like I feel like they confirmed it when it was. I don't know if it was when they announced Portal or if it was when they announced the game. But I feel I could be wrong, but I feel like I've seen that. Maybe it was just speculation, but I feel like I've seen confirmed that it was free to play. I could be wrong.
I mean, if it is, great. If it's not, then I mean, it's a bit of a shame, but. I just think because this is the thing, if you've got a free-to-play element of a game that becomes insanely popular, that by nature is going to lead to sales of your main game. That's the thing. So, and I just think the way the free-to-play games are at the moment, it's so worth doing. And
I think it's almost they need to at this point. If they want to compete, they just about have to have something to get people in the door. Like they need to, even if it's just like putting it for free on EA Play or something, like having some way that people can, which that's still not free, I guess, but having a way to get people in where they don't have to worry about like, oh, is this going to be worth, my $70 or whatever. That's the main reason that games can be a bust, because if it doesn't look that good, people get a bit skeptical. But if it's free, like, people are just so willing to. It was the same with me and Warzone. I had no interest in playing I hadn't played COD in years, and Blackout didn't look that great to me. So when Warzone came out, I was like, no, I don't really care. But then it was free, all my mates got it, so I got it, and then I literally became addicted to it. So I think they need that. I think they literally need to have something free just to get those people in the door, and then that'll lead to more people playing the base game and getting the battle pass and stuff.
What would be great is like if you could download Battlefield 2042 and you had a mode that was free, and it's always prompting you like, hey, there's these other game modes you could buy if you buy the whole game. Like, I think that that's how it worked for me with with Warzone. I bought Warzone and it like prompted me. I was like, you know what? I love the gunplay and I love this experience so much. I'm gonna buy this, and it's the first time I've ever bought a Call of Duty game.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. Like when you load up Warzone, it's got like three windows. So it's like Warzone, Modern Warfare Cold War, I think. So
Yep.
it shows you that these other options are available, and it gives you that incentive to go and buy these things. And in any free-to-play game, or if there's a free-to-play element in any way, it needs to provide you with incentives to spend money on the game. Because going back to Fortnite, back in December last year, they introduced this thing called the Fortnite Crew. So I think it's like £12 a month, and you get 1,000 V-Bucks, a skin, like a complete entire skin loadout, and the battle pass. I mean, it's not free because obviously you're paying for it, but you get given the battle pass, so you don't have to spend anything on that. So and in terms of the way
Fortnite as a service.
yeah, so if you go to buy 1,000 V-Bucks, it's like £6.49 now because they reduced the prices months ago, which is awesome. But all in all, what you're paying per month is actually, comparatively speaking, with the game's valuation and stuff like that, is really good, and it's providing you with that. Like, it's provided me with a good incentive to actually go and spend around £12 a month on that game, because I'm getting loads of stuff. With the 1,000 V-Bucks I'm getting every month, it means that I get to save and spend all of my premium currency on, if I see a really awesome skin in the game that I like, then I'm going to be able to go and buy that because I'll have the V-Bucks for it. And it's all about providing these good value incentives. Whether it is in terms of really cool customization, or whether it's new game features and stuff like that. Battlefield absolutely needs to have a free-to-play element. If it doesn't, if Hazard Zone's not free-to-play, then one way Battlefield really needs to go is, I think, just really have that free-to-play element in.
Yeah.
Whether that's added later in Battlefield 2042 or whether that's the next Battlefield game, just have it in there, because it's so good. I mean, free-to-play games are the biggest games out there right now. Yeah. Warzone, Apex, Fortnite, Splitgate at the moment is really growing in popularity. League of Legends, Valorant, just all of these free-to-play games.
Yeah, this is the new era. It used to be like the season pass era. Now it's the free-to-play live service era of gaming. And that's clearly what works the best.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, look, 10 years ago, Call of Duty, okay, $60, $40 season pass, you're spending $100 on the game now. And obviously, they are popular games, but now you can get a game that's, potentially bigger and better, but for free. Like, you don't have to spend any money whatsoever. So it's like, let's say you have so instead of spending $100 on a Call of Duty game and the season pass, you've now got $100 that you could go and spend on Warzone. So imagine, because if that's not necessarily going to be the case, but imagine if you were put in that situation where it's like you've got $100, so you might go and buy MW2 and season pass, but then when Warzone comes out, you then have $100 worth of premium currency in your account. So it's like, okay. Yeah. Well, this pack come out with purple tracer rounds. I really like that. I'm going to go and get that. And you can go and buy all these really cool skins for your operators and stuff like that. And yeah, it's huge. That's the thing. As we've explained already, free-to-play stuff incentivizes people to actually spend more money on the game than they normally would. And I really do think they need to tap into that.
Definitely. And with that, we'll call it an episode. Thank you all so much for listening to this episode of The Battlefield Show. We greatly appreciate your support. And if you do so, please leave us a review on iTunes. We greatly appreciate it. Helps us grow the show and helps other people find this podcast as well. Or just share it with some of your friends who you're going to squad up with in Battlefield 2042. If you want to find Mark's channel, definitely check it out in the description of this episode, as well as Sammy's. So, we'll catch you all in the next episode. We'd like to thank Ethan Clark for our thumbnail and all of you for listening. As always, we'll see you on the battlefield.